something that occurs in GEO, but not SEO, is something called ghost citations. A ghost citation is when the work or the content itself gets cited, but the original source doesn't.
You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and today is a guest episode. It's someone you'll already know if you've been listening for a while to the Content 10x podcast. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Amanda Natividad. So Amanda joins me for the third time. If you've caught her first two episodes, you'll know about zero-click content. That's a term that Amanda coined, and this time we talk about zero-click content some more, but also we go to new places as well. In case you don't know Amanda, by way of introduction, she is Chief Evangelist at SparkToro, which is an audience research tool. She's also co-authored a book with Rand Fishkin, someone who we've also had on the podcast, and their book is called Zero-Click Marketing: How to Build Brands and Earn Customers on a Traffic-Starved Web. That's out in October 2026, so depending on when you're listening to this episode, you can either get it on pre-order or you can go right ahead and purchase it. Amanda first joined the podcast back in 2022, as I mentioned, to talk about zero-click content. And at that time, the idea was still pretty new. And she came back in 2024 and we spoke some more about zero-click content, but also about attribution and audience research, which became a bigger part of the conversation. And this time, she's arrived with more data, a hard edge to her argument, and a lot to say about what AI search is doing to all of it. Listen on to hear us discuss why zero-click search has gone from 50% to 68% of Google searches since Amanda's first appearance. We also talk about what a ghost citation is and why it's becoming one of the trickier problems in AI search. Also, the 4 GEO mechanics and the two most B2B marketing teams still neglect. Amanda shares a genuinely surprising story about how an LLM recommended a product based on what Amanda needed and not how the company had positioned who it actually supports. We also discuss why last-click attribution may be costing companies their best customers and the one metric Amanda would replace last-click attribution with and why it matters. It's a fantastic conversation, as is all conversations with Amanda. I'm delighted to have her back on the podcast. Let's dive in. Amanda, welcome back to the Content 10x podcast. I'm so pleased to have you back on the show.
I'm so happy to be back. This is our three-peat.
Right, so I was looking at this and you were on the podcast in 2022 where we talked about exploring zero-click content, and then you were back in 2024 and it weirdly almost to the day, it was the 4th of July 2024, and then there we talked again about the evolution of zero-click marketing and the concept, and also we chatted about changes to attribution, audience research. And so it's so interesting because firstly, it just seems like we have this two yearly catch up that we have. And you've gone from building the case for zero-click content to having literally written the book. So congrats, you've got a podcast, you've got a business built around it, you've got the book. So for anyone who's missed the fantastic previous episodes and isn't familiar with you, Amanda, would you mind just sharing just a brief intro as to what you're all about?
Not at all. So I currently am the chief evangelist for audience research startup SparkToro. This is where we have, we are the makers of a tool that helps you better understand where your audience is hanging out online, what they're searching for, what they're talking about, podcasts they listen to, social accounts they follow, and so on. So that is the big part of my day-to-day right now. And then the rest of it is spent evangelizing zero-click marketing. So I have the forthcoming book, Zero-Click Marketing, that I'm co-authoring with Rand Fishkin. And then I also have a podcast and consultancy by the same name. I been a marketer for around 14, 15 years now. My experience started out in journalism. So I used to work in tech news, had a quarter life crisis, tried to pivot to food, and then sort of stumbled into marketing. So the way I got into marketing was, it was when content was still pretty early on. Like content marketing as a marketing discipline was still getting formed. And so at the time, it was like the thing where you had the most competitive edge was, are you a good writer? Like, do you know how to read research? Do you know how to create original research, right? So that was basically my entry point into marketing. And I just explained that up front because that informs how I've done my marketing all throughout. And then the other piece is I really feel like I've been doing this sort of audience research driven marketing since I've been a marketer, like since getting into marketing, because as a non-trained marketer, that was the more intuitive way for me to go about creating campaigns that resonate with my audience and distributing that content or those campaigns in the channels and platforms where my audience already hangs out. And so like I came up in marketing through that kind of approach, only I didn't call it audience research. I didn't know there was a term for it, right? Or there probably wasn't even a term for it. But I was doing that and not as much of the keyword research, the kind of classic SEO tactics that I learned a little bit later on in my career. And that was when I was like, "Oh, that's strange to me. Is that really how people identify their pain points and problems? I don't think that's how people actually do it." But anyway, that all just informs how I do marketing today and sort of how it kind of laid the groundwork for zero click marketing and how that works now.
Well, when we spoke in 2022, we were talking about how over half of Google searches ended without a click, and the social platforms were dinging you for sharing those links and things like that. And I noticed that now, I saw on your website and SparkToro that we're saying it's about 68% of searches that are ending without that click, and that's climbing. So, at what point does zero click marketing stop being a strategy, and simply become the only way marketing works, do you think? Are we there? Is that the way that marketing works now?
That's so interesting. I think so. I mean, we're very close to that, right? I mean, I feel like 4 years ago when I started talking about zero click content and we were, really entering the zero click internet era, right? I think that was a point in time when people were starting to think, "Oh, so that's why my content isn't getting as much reach because I'm putting links in social," or, "Oh, I guess that's what's happening in Google search when people are searching for certain types of queries. They're just getting it directly in the search engine results page?" I think now we are at the point of, "Oh, it's here." And I think now links going in social platforms, I feel like now that's more just common knowledge, right? I think I mean, I'm sure there are some people who don't realize that, right? But I think more and more that's become common knowledge. I'm starting to think that AI visibility is our new, but old in a way, our new KPI for the recognition of zero click marketing. Because AI visibility is something you can track. Like you can use a number of tools like HubSpot's AEO grader for a free tool. You can use gumshoe.ai. You can use these tools to track your overall visibility. That's possible. And so I think that finally gives people something to look at when they're thinking to themselves, are people seeing my marketing? Like, is it getting out there? Is there a surface layer where I'm showing up, you know? And I think AI visibility is starting to address that.
Absolutely. I know that when I was looking at the SparkToro data about this and AI, and specifically what jumped out to me, a stat that ChatGPT sends clicks at about a rate of 1.3%. And then Google, is low, but it's not as low as that. So I guess it's really important to get cited and found by AI, because that's the place that we're all heading to these days to ask a question. But with that low number in terms of the clicks, like ChatGPT sending such a teeny amount of traffic, I guess that means that AI search is this extreme zero click environment, isn't it? Even compared to Google, and that's been dwindling. So, what do you see that means practically for B2B content teams? Because we want to be cited by AI, it's where people go, but it's an extreme zero click. Is that what you find as well? Like that AI is even more of a zero click place?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's becoming more and more important to make sure your website and really everything about your company, right? I'm saying website as a proxy for what your company is, what you do, your proof points, your testimonials, your case studies, everything about your company, right? It's becoming more and more important for all of that to exist online in a way that's accessible and crawlable, by accessible to people, right? But also just accessible to the robots that try to help people or try to help people make decisions. And I think it's becoming even more important because human beings, right, are like people are not using the web in the way they always have, right? Our web usage has evolved over time. I mean, one quick example of it is, yeah, sure, like most of the search that occurs online happens on a search engine, especially Google, right? Something like 80% of search still happens on a traditional search engine, which makes sense, right? Especially because I think it's something like a third of these queries are navigational, right? You might pull up Chrome, type in a website name, even if you don't know the URL, right? Like that's technically a Google search, but that's a navigational search. So there's that. But at the same time, if you look at where people are spending time online and how they're using these platforms, we also know that search is increasingly occurring on platforms like e-commerce, so like Amazon, Home Depot, eBay, Etsy, social media, and of course, LLMs. So now, about even though 80% of search happens in a traditional search engine, 1 in 5 searches happen somewhere other than traditional search.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Just like the behaviors and how they're how they're changing. I find it interesting actually, those numbers that are staying that high, that search is still happening in the search engines, just with the rise of generative AI search, LLM search, and things like that. So it's still staying quite high, but it's all flipping and switching around now as our behaviors change. So yeah, it's really it's really interesting. In your book, oh, congratulations, by the way. It's first just to say it's fantastic that you've got your book, Zero Click Marketing: How to Build Brands and Earn Customers on a Traffic Starved Web. When is the big release? I know it's on pre-release, but when's the big date?
We do know it'll be in October.
Is it?
So
Okay.
for folks not based in the US, right now the international shipping fee for our right now it's available for pre-order through our publisher, and the shipping fee outside the US is quite hefty. So if one is interested in purchasing it today, you could either consider an electronic bundle, which is the ebook and audiobook, or you can wait until closer to October when we will launch on third-party retailers like Amazon, Kobo, and others.
Very exciting. Well, congratulations. And I know how much goes into writing a book, and I know how much goes into just the whole process of getting it to
Thank
market as
you.
well. With your book, you've been sharing such great content for the past 4 years or so on zero click marketing. What would readers expect to get that you haven't covered? What ground are you going to, new territory, things like that within the book that's coming out very soon?
Yeah, so I would say the first half of the book really covers why we got to where we are today. Like, we my co-author, Rand Fishkin, and I have been talking about, zero-click search, um, the way traffic flows around the internet, what people are doing online. Like, we've covered all those things in various research studies, but the book really crystallizes, well, how did this all come to be? Why did this happen? Who does this help? Did we train ourselves? Like, did this emerge because we users wanted it, or were we trained to behave in a certain way? Is a little bit of both, right? So the book covers a lot of that. The book also covers the zero click approach throughout all your marketing efforts. And then we do also spend quite a bit of time on measurement versus attribution.
That was my next question, actually, because I've seen you talk about last click attribution as something that marketers have become guilty of, like complicit in this last click attribution, and that being, so important. And we want to break out of that, actually. So, who has to change their mind first in companies to try and break out of this fixation on last click attribution? Is it the marketer, or is it the purse strings, the CFO, the budget holder that is becoming a bit too sort of fixated on last click attribution as where the budget needs to go?
Well, certainly both, but I do think it's more important for executives to understand this shift because these things kind of trickle down, right? But I think it's we can have these conversations, right? And we can talk about this in a way that makes sense for the CFO or the CEO. And the book covers quite a bit of that. But in essence, I mean, it's that attribution is flawed, right? Like, conversion windows are relatively arbitrary, as in some platforms default to 7-day conversion window, sometimes it's 30 days. But we also know that a lot of customers, and often the most loyal, most engaged customers, will convert after 30 days. I think it's something like closer to 40 days, the 40-day conversion window, which is outside of the attribution window, in which case you technically wouldn't even see it. And so even just taking that and looking at that as, well, why are we making decisions based on only the metrics that we can see? That doesn't make sense, right? And so what we're also not saying is no to attribution, but yes to measurement. So we're not suggesting that, you just you let your marketing team do whatever they want. No, it's you measure success along the way, right? You measure what you can measure, and then you can do retroactive look backs on, okay, what happened on this day or this week that this campaign launched, right? You can do incrementality testing, like turning off certain types of ads or ads on certain platforms during certain blackout periods so that you can see, okay, well, did that make an impact on our overall customer growth and revenue, right? You can do these things. And so that's what we really want to encourage marketers to do. And we want to encourage CFOs and CEOs to be receptive to.
What's the most effective argument that you've seen work for a particularly skeptical finance or leadership team in this area?
Well, I think a couple of tactics work, and I think they're on both ends of this spectrum of, like, micro, like what happens in one's own universe, and the macro versus what happens in general across the industry. And so in those ways that I see those being effective are the macro example, like take a big example and make it really concrete. So the example that I will cite is Dropbox. So earlier this year, it was in March 2026, Dropbox's data science team published a research paper on incrementality. They did month-long blackout periods where they turned off advertising for mobile ads and then for search engine marketing for SEM. And so before they turned off ads, right, they saw that they were return on ad spend positive, like, 1.2, or it might have been 2x. So that looks good. It looks pretty normal, healthy. But when they did these blackout tests, they turned off mobile advertising for the month and looked back on it, they saw that what was actually true was that these ads were return on ad spend negative, where for every dollar they were investing into mobile ads, they were getting back 76 cents or so. And then for SEM, it was something like um 0.9. So something like for every cent or for every dollar they were investing, they were getting like 92 cents back. And so what they ended up doing was shifting budget away from these particular platforms to the tune of $25 million. And then they saw lifetime value, lifetime value go up, customer acquisition costs go down. Great example, right? Great big example of, look, these are millions of dollars that were being saved or invested more intelligently, more efficiently. That's the macro example. The micro example I would encourage people to do is to see what examples you can take in that CEOs, that CFOs world. Like, one, you could even try asking, okay, what podcast do you listen to? Where did like do you listen to the ads? Yes or no? When was the last time you bought something? Where did you hear about that product from? And kind of doing that. And then you could also, and this is something that I have used many times, this is the whole like, yeah, but if we don't put links in our posts, how are we going to drive people to our website? I get it, right? However, if you're constantly putting links in posts, now I'm not saying, hey, never put these links in your post. I'm saying be very strategic about it. The bulk of your social media content, what you put out there on your social media accounts, the bulk of it should not be link based, right? Some of it should be link based, sure. Most of it should be native to platform content, whether it's all text, uploaded video, right? Uploaded images, native to platform content. And so I also say, okay, well, if you want to put a link into every post, then that means that fewer people will engage with it because the algorithm will suppress it. And if fewer people engage with it, then over time, the algorithm will slowly learn that people don't want to engage with your content. And so they will stop serving your content to your audience because they think your audience doesn't want it. And so what you can do, sure, is, okay, put in your links. But if you put in your links, that is a surefire way to slowly erode attention to your page, which we know certainly will happen. Would you rather that happen and you can track it, or you think you can track it? Or would you rather we optimize for overall impressions, engagement, discussion, right? Like growing and sharing and talking with your community, right? I think when you put it like that, no executive would say, oh, let's still do the link thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It just makes sense, and that is just how the platforms work, and you just have to be cognizant of that. And I guess watch the data speaks for itself in terms of the lack of reach and the dings and things like that, doesn't it? So you do have to find another way to measure the attribution there. Just a quick break from today's conversation to tell you about our B2B content operations benchmark. It's a free assessment that tells you exactly how your content strategy, operations, and team capability measure up in under 4 minutes. You'll walk away with a personalised report and specific actionable recommendations based on how you answered. Head to content10x.com/benchmark to take it now. It's completely free. And now back to the episode. We spoke a little bit about, AI and generative engine optimization. And I know that I've seen you talk about this, that for somebody who's maybe just got their head around zero-click content and understanding this shift that's been happening for years of zero-click content, what would you say is the version of how generative AI search is different to SEO when talking about zero-click content?
One of the biggest differences is ghost citations, right? In SEO and in generative generative engine optimization, or GEO, we know that there are things like mentions, right? Mentioning a brand mentions. That's a thing everywhere. There are also citations, right? It's getting the citation with the link or the direct attribution. But something that is more that occurs in GEO but not SEO is something called ghost citations. And I believe Kevin Indig came up with that phrasing. But a ghost citation is when the work or the content itself gets cited, but the original source doesn't. So the example would be if like ChatGPT were to say, "Oh, about 68% of Google searches end without a click." Well, that came from SparkToro, but it might not say that. And it might depend on a ChatGPT user's settings, right? So that's something to be mindful of, where in a sense, do you want ghost citations? Well, no, we all would rather have regular citations, but absent that, I guess it's the next best thing if you had to choose, right? So that's one thing that's different. The other thing that is different is the user behavior. So AI, believe it's either AI or ChatGPT specifically, but AI drives less than 1% of traffic to websites, right? So it drives very, very small click-through rates are very, very small. It's something like it is under 1%. So click-through rates are tiny. But oh, the other thing is you won't even see the referral traffic, even if you get it, because there are some instances in which ChatGPT might include the UTM source, ChatGPT. Most of the time it doesn't. The other LLM platforms, Perplexity, Gemini, Claude, they don't include those links. So if you do get a link from Claude or whatever, it'll show up as direct traffic in your Google Analytics.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So there's even that. Even if you do get a click, you can't see it, which is true. And then finally, the traffic that does come in. So let's say you do get the click. The traffic that does come in is very, very high intent. I think like some sources across was it Passion Fruit, even Adobe Insights, Ahrefs, SEMrush, right? A number of sources have seen that the AI driven traffic can convert up to 10 times as much as regular regular referral traffic from a non-AI source. So what's frustrating is the traffic, so the mention you may or may not get in an LLM might lead to traffic, which you can't see, but it's actually really important because it's very high quality traffic because it's people who are more likely to transact. I do want to give an example to this because I feel like we've been in the abstract for a little bit now. And I'll give a firsthand example. So a while back, I was making my website. Yes, admittedly, I was using Claude Code for this, not a secret, but I was using it for that. And I was building the zero-click marketing website. It's zeroclickmarketing.co. And I wanted to include a contact form because I thought, well, I want a contact form in case someone wants to reach out to me. But I just want a simple, nice looking form where I don't know, it'll like email me and then I'll get the email forward, whatever. I don't care what the email looks like. I just want it to be accurate. I just want it to happen. So I was working in Claude, Ask Claude. It it ran its query and it said you should use formspree.io because it covers your bases of it's a simple contact form that you can fully skin or reskin in your designed branded format. It'll email you right away. And they also have a free tier where it's something like up to 20 or 50, whatever it is, X amount of contacts per month. It's free. So just use this basically. And I was like, that makes sense to me. Yeah, let's do that. And then it was super simple to use. All I needed was like this little unique ID from FormSpree. Just had to copy and paste that into some code in Claude. Voila, it works perfectly fine. It's great. Now I mentioned this, and I actually ended up meeting the founder of FormSpree at the MicroConf event earlier this year. And he asked me, he's like, have you ever seen our website? And I was like, well, I was on the website to sign up for it, but no, I didn't read it. And he was like, you haven't seen our homepage? And I was like, no, I haven't. He showed me the homepage, and the homepage, I think it might be different now, but at the time the homepage was like contact forms for coders, for developers. And I was like, oh, I am not a coder. I am not a developer or engineer. I am a scrappy marketer
Yeah.
who has decent knowledge of HTML and CSS. That's it. It ends there. Like my knowledge ends there very clearly. And the homepage, right? Like the hero image was a snippet of code. And it was very much like, this is for developers. Like, you need a nice, simple contact form that you can have in your own brand. This is what we do. And so this is my long example of saying, like, if I had Googled which contact form to use, chances are FormSpree wouldn't have come up as a marketing resource because they are not, I mean, I'll say were because I don't know what the messaging looks like today. They were not positioned for marketers or creators. They were positioned for developers. So I probably wouldn't have seen it. And then even if I did see it, I would have gone to the homepage. I would have seen the snippet of code in the hero, and I would have been like, oh, well, it's not for me. I don't know what any of that means. But the truth is, it was the solution I needed because I had Claude Code doing the heavy lifting of creating the template for me. But I had enough knowledge of how things work to know where I should copy and paste the ID. Alternatively, I could have asked Claude to do it, right? I could have given Claude, hey, here's my code. Can you just do it for me? But I just happened to do it myself. But it doesn't matter, right? I don't need to be a developer to know that. And so, but at the same time, I am actually the perfect customer for FormSpree because my needs for just a few contacts per month, that was exactly what I needed. If I get more than that, I'm happy to pay for the product because the tool works very nicely. It does exactly what I need to do. I'll pay for it when I need to. And I think, and then the marketing team at FormSpree would never know about any of this, right? And it's because this particular use case issue wasn't their problem, right? It was a need that I had that an LLM knew how to address. And so I think there is opportunity for B2B companies, especially software companies. And this might even just be like B2B and B2C software companies, right? To learn from, where consider less maybe about who you're positioning your product for and more about what you're positioning your product for. Like maybe it doesn't matter if it's developer, coder, or marketer or creator. It's just, here is the use case. You can be anybody. I don't care who you are, but here's the use case for it.
Do you think that he asked you that question? Have you been on our homepage? Because this was a bit of a common theme that he was seeing, and he was finding it quite interesting. And it was,
Yes.
yeah, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, like I think they had seen a very significant amount of growth over that in that time period, over that past month or several weeks or so. And they knew it was coming in through LLMs. And so they were starting to understand like why it was coming in, but they were getting a lot of people like me, like a lot of people who were like, scrappy marketers, creators, entrepreneurs who just had a very specific use case but didn't actually need a bunch of coding experience to implement it.
Yeah. I've seen you talk about GEO into the breakdown of four things that people need to be wary of, like aware of the four mechanics: retrievability, extractability, credibility, and public evidence. And that's really interesting, isn't it? Because that's a clear example of where they were doing something clearly ticking retrievability and extractability and, well, I guess all of it, the credibility, the public evidence was there to show that this was a trustworthy tool that was right for you, and it recommended it to you. What what do you think of those that B2B marketers can often neglect in that? Retrievability, extractability, credibility, and public evidence. What's often neglected, do you think?
I think I still think public record is neglected, which is kind of funny. I mean, retrievability, can the LLMs retrieve your website? Like, are you even findable? That's a pretty basic and easy one to ensure. Most people can do that. Most people do that. Accessibility. Can the LLMs, can the bots crawl your website? Can they read your website? If you have video embedded, can it parse through that and AKA, can it read the transcript? Can you embed the transcript somewhere? Yes, you can. If you use Wistia, Wistia has LLM friendly embeds. So there's that. So we have retrievability, extractability. What was my third one?
The other one was credibility and then
Credibility.
public evidence.
Okay, credibility and public evidence, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Credibility is like, should people listen to you, right? Like, are you the authority on this topic? Which, depending on what it is, right? Are you the authority on your topic, right? On like your product? Well, you should be. And then public evidence or public record is, does it exist publicly online? So I do think those latter two are the perpetual to-dos for marketers, right? We always have to figure out how to continue to strengthen our credibility. And you do that partly through the public record, right? Like through getting the mentions, the coverage in industry publications, in news outlets, right? That is one factor in improving your credibility. That's also public record. But other things that are public record are just your website. Like if you have a bunch of really, really great case studies of your customers being happy with your product and leveraging your product, well, maybe you should have a page that is fully retrievable and extractable that just speaks to use cases about your product, right? And it's like, maybe maybe it isn't something you would actively market. Like nobody wants to see on their social media feed as they're scrolling from some B2B SaaS company, like, oh, look at our cool case studies. You'd be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But if you are in that high intent to purchase, like
Yeah.
searching for the solution, then you might go to an LLM, you might go to Google and be like, does SparkToro actually suit my needs? Can I do a PR strategy in SparkToro? You're not going to ask that unless you want that, right? And if you want that, then it should be easy for you to find,
Yeah.
right? SparkToro should, in my example just now, right? If someone is searching for a PR strategy in SparkToro, then SparkToro should have resources on how to do that. And we do. I'm going to search for it now. But yeah.
I guess it's it's the kind of classic reverse engineer, what you would expect anybody to be in the case of searching with keywords, key phrases, and in the case of GEO and AI LLMs, what would they ask? What questions would they ask? And it's reverse engineering that you have the right content to be there to either feed search or LLMs with the answers that people are going to to be asking, isn't it? It's kind of reverse engineering that, and it's really interesting. I think people are paying a bit more attention to that now and realizing what they need to do with their content to feeding one feeds the other as well. Like if you're doing really well for either of them, you're going to be winning with them both somewhat, aren't you? Because they both have very similar principles, but it's just slightly nuanced, a bit more question based versus keyword and key phrase based. But like you said, with the added complexities of the technical side of, but can we be found? Can we be crawled? Are we technically set up correctly and things like that as well? So it all feeds in together. I'm very conscious I'm running out of time here, and I was going to ask you a whole load of questions about you yourself and your personal brand and personal brand content and how you've grown subscribers for your email and you start the podcast, but I'm running out of time, so I probably have to do a take two, won't we? So I guess I'll wrap up with what's one metric that you wish more B2B content teams would replace last click attribution with? What would that one metric be that you'd like them to replace it with?
I would, if I could just have it my way, it would be mentions. It will just be public mentions of your product. I'll keep that very broad because I think the things like somebody just tweeting about you and saying, "Gosh, like this tool is great," or like, "I love this thing and this tool," that speaks volumes because most people don't do that, right? Like, if I like some tool I'm using, I don't often tweet about it. Or when I say tweet, I mean any social media post. But when someone does, that signals something. It probably means that at least a handful of other people feel the same way.
Such a great metric. And when I think about content 10x and how we've grown through the years, for as much, content that we have been putting out there and all the things we've done over the years, the number of times that we've managed to get new business and start new relationships with people, it's often come from you were mentioned. Like you were mentioned. Like whether I'm in a private Slack community for, name the industry, business owners or something, and somebody mentioned you and other people mentioned you, or somebody put that post out and just quite a few people mentioned you. It makes such a difference, doesn't it, when people go out of the way to mention somebody and stands out above most other things, because it ticks, although so many boxes, like the credibility and trust and self-proof and all of that. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on to the podcast. Once again, I'll have to book you in for 2 years' time, won't I? But maybe we'll try not to leave it so long next time, because like I said, I had all these other questions, but you can only ask and cover so much, can't you? So thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I'll make sure it's not more than 2 years next time. I'll put the link to the book, obviously, to go and get a copy of the book. Depending on when you're watching and listening this, it'll either be out or you can go get the pre-order of it. So I'll put the link to that. And the site, your website that you mentioned, Zero Click, SparkToro as well, LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else you'd like people to go, or do we think we've got that
I
covered
think we've
well?
got all of it. Please buy the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure it's fantastic. So yeah, go buy the book. And well, thanks, Amanda. Really, really great to chat to you. And yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your time. It's been a great conversation.
It's been fun. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just to mention, if you'd like B2B content marketing tips and advice landing in your inbox every 2 weeks, head to content10x.com/newsletter and subscribe. It's completely free and I'd love to have you there. And if you're curious about how your content strategy and operations compares to other B2B teams, we have a free benchmark assessment that takes less than 4 minutes to complete. You'll get a personalised report with specific recommendations based on your answers. Just head to content10x.com/benchmark to take it now. And finally, if you'd like help with your content marketing, whether that's consulting and strategy, content creation or content repurposing, we'd love to speak with you. We offer all of that, and you can find out more and get in touch at content10x.com/enquiry. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.